Good morning. It is Monday, April 1st, 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. First off, an apology for the delay in getting the report out today and also the tone of my voice. As you can imagine, I picked up a spring cold of some kind that was pretty hard to shake, but I was able to shake it off by this morning. It has affected my voice, but the show must go on as best it can, so here it goes. First off, a happy Easter to everyone that celebrated it this weekend. And it was also, by the Biden administration's declaration, Transgender Visibility Day. Why any presidential administration would engage in a single act of spitting in the face of a religious tradition that is embraced by a significant portion of American citizens is beyond me. But then again, we do live in strange times, do we not? So I'm not going to try to read in anything to this because it's quite obvious that we are dealing with very strange beings at the head of our affairs, both the Biden administration and the Democratic Party that props it up. So I will leave that topic except to say that, well, even if you're not a Christian celebrating Easter, you should be insulted. Because for a government to show that much contempt for a majority of its population is, well, I don't know what there is to say about it. Maybe we need to come up with some new terminology for these very strange times we live in. Now, on to the bigger story that people have been emailing me about, and that is the late, great Francis Scott Key Bridge of Baltimore. Well, I didn't want to report anything on it initially. For that, I waited, primarily because so many people are throwing so many theories out, none of which are substantiated. I decided to just not get into the fray and wait for some of the dust to settle, or in this case, the steel settling into the water. Too many, I have to say, conspiracy explanations were flying about, all of which are bogus. This is nothing more than an accident, which is self-evident. There was no blowing up of the bridge with explosives that could never have been planted there, and what they saw as sparks coming off were basically high voltage power cables that light that thing at night. And I've been over it many times. There's no place to stop a car there. There's no way to go across on foot. There's no way people would ever do that, nor would it be relevant, nor have I ever heard of a bridge being blown up after it's collapsing. It's just nuts. There's too much nuts out there, and we have too much crazy stuff, people, to deal with. So let's just look at it the way it obviously is. A very poorly managed vehicle, a vessel, I should say, of the water that had mechanical problems, rammed into a bridge that had no protection on it, and was built at a time when ships were a fraction of the size. If anyone's wondering how big that ship is, it's almost as long as an aircraft carrier and weighs about as much. It would be like the USS Gerald Ford or the Ronald Reagan plowing into something, except in a much more compact package. There's no way anything is going to survive that. But then again, the Baltimore Transit authorities never saw it as a problem to put protection around the pylons holding that thing up. As Napoleon said, and I'm paraphrasing the man, never put off to genius, cunning, and planning what you can more easily put off to stupidity, incompetence, and there you have it. Anyways, the most important thing about this story is that it is not an act of terrorism. In fact, if it had been an act of terrorism, any terrorist worth his salt wouldn't have plowed into that bridge. They would have gone a few miles down the Chesapeake and plowed into the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, which I'm also quite familiar with. That bridge is about 200 feet in the air and carries about 3 times the traffic and is often one long over-the-water parking lot, given the way things are managed there. If a ship was ever hijacked, which would have been very easy to do all these years, and plowed into that bridge, it would have been a few thousand dead. It would have been a 9/11-like event. This is something about terrorists, is they're clever, they're cunning, they're determined, but smart, no. One of the reasons we know this is on 9/11, the plane that was plowing into the North Tower, I believe, came down the Hudson River and went right past the Indian Point nuclear power plant. Had it taken a sharp left turn and crashed into that nuclear facility, it would have probably killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and caused a meltdown that would render that part of the United States uninhabitable for many thousands of years. What I would like to point out is that this is an investigation that's going to take years, and what caused the accident is not as important as how to fix it. One of the things I found personally annoying, having had some understanding of the history of how Americans can get things done, talk about it taking months to clear that channel and years, up to 10 years to rebuild that bridge, I find basically reprehensible down to the DNA level of my Americanism. If this had happened, say, in World War II, I think that channel would have been cleared within a day or two at the most. They would have probably blown it up, brought in some ships to haul that debris away, and just opened that channel up. And it's just as urgent because depending on how you count the employment, anywhere from 100 to 250,000 jobs in the region of Baltimore are dependent on that harbor. The longshoremen, automobile dealerships, trucking companies, and all the people that feed them. That is a massive economic hit to a city which is, frankly, one of the most messed up in the United States. It's not going to go very well for Baltimore, for sure. Baltimore is also a major automobile transportation hub, export and import. It's going to result in all of those companies pulling up stakes and moving to other ports. And when they do, I guarantee you, once they've settled in someplace else, they are not coming back to Baltimore. So this is really killing that city. I don't see anything good coming out of it. Now, if this was China, of course, that bridge would have been cleared by now and the replacement probably halfway built. Americans can do such miracles when we want to. And I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I was talking to him about the story of the USS Yorktown. The Yorktown was a carrier in the Pacific during the Pacific War, early part, and it was in the first major engagement between the Americans and the Japanese at the Battle of the Coral Sea, where it was heavily damaged. It had a bomb right through its flight deck, a lot of other stuff that had to be fixed. And when they hauled it back to Pearl Harbor, the repair facility people were telling Admiral Nimitz that it was going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to fix it. And he told them, that's unacceptable. You have 72 hours. And guess what? They got it fixed in 72 hours, at least fixed enough to go back to battle. A lot of repair crews were still on the ship when it left. And unfortunately, it was sunk at the Battle of Midway, but it was the Battle of Midway which really turned the tide of the war very early on towards the Americans in favor of winning it. We can fix things real quick, folks, when we want to, but we have to want to. Now, one of the things that's also going to result in the economic fallout of what arguably, if you talk to any real shipping experts, could be the single biggest maritime-related disaster in history in terms of dollars, in terms of money, is that cargo from all over the world that was on its way to Baltimore is now going to be dropped off at the closest port. So if you were, shipping something from, say, Hong Kong, and it was on its way to Baltimore, it might get dropped off in Japan, it might get dropped off in Australia, and it's going to be a real fiasco getting all this stuff to where it's supposed to go. It's going to be a mess economically for a lot of places. But it's not going to be something that can't be fixed. It can't be addressed. People are hemming and hawing about the Suez Canal not being used as much as it was, and that's because of insurance, because of going up the Red Sea is so dangerous right now. But the Suez Canal was closed from 1967 until the early 70s. It was just closed. We just didn't use it. There's a way that we can get things done in this world when we want to. It's just a matter of wanting to. So what you're seeing, though, when you're talking about all these companies that are now talking about how they're going to get involved in rebuilding the bridge and all this other stuff, well, you're looking at people that are licking their chops in terms of money, because if you get a piece of that action, you're going to make out very well. And Baltimore is not known for being a clean city when it comes to, shall we say, getting things done properly. So that'll be something fun to watch in a way, but it's effectively killed that city and, to an extent, the state as well. Baltimore really has no other reason to exist except for that port. It's a bad city. I don't go there if I can avoid it. I sure as heck am not going to go there now. But we're going to have to wait and see how this all goes and how it plays out. Now, there's going to be, I'm going to go into a couple more things here. One is something that is being not looked at, but is related to trucking and related to port facilities, and that's the newest AI gimmick, which is going to be to have self-driving 18-wheeler tractor trailers very soon on the road. Now, this is something they've been working on since 2020, and they have all sorts of prototypes being driven around the United States with human minders on them. In other words, you might have not known it, but there have been trucks going around some parts of the country, especially Texas, where the truck is actually driving itself, but there is a human being there just in case something goes wrong. When people were saying you're never going to replace truck drivers, well, I think you will, at least if these guys have their ways. The company that to look at is called Aurora Innovation. That's the main one that's dealing with this, Aurora Innovation. There are a few others, including, of course, Tesla, which although the head of that company is so big on watching out for AI, it's interesting how much he's embracing it. Time frame for this is going to be 2027. So 3 years from now, we will be seeing 18-wheel trucks running down American highways with no human beings at the wheel. If you don't think that's a good idea, well, I have to agree with you. I don't think it's a good idea either. In fact, I think it's a very bad idea. But this is where AI is leading us, and they're doing everything they can to eliminate humans everywhere. Now, one bit of constructive criticism I would like to put out in closing is the alternative media outlets that are operating. I'm not going to name names, but I was pretty surprised and in some ways disappointed that some of the sources I regularly go to were jumping on a lot of these so-called conspiracy theories about Baltimore. No, they were conspiracy theories about Baltimore's bridge. And they weren't saying, this is nonsense. They were saying, you got to make up your own mind. No. Sometimes it's the job of a journalist to say something is nonsense. And in many cases, there's nonsense out there. You want to tell people what is silly and what isn't, what is real and what isn't. Okay, when you're talking about political views or different sides of a conflict, that's one thing. But if something is obviously nuts, you should say it's nuts. So I would ask that these providers out there, please start avoiding this, because you're getting into the side of journalism which went bad because of entertainment value. Journalism and reporting the news is not entertainment, it's news. And that's something that we lost focus on in the United States. News had to be entertaining, it had to be inspirational or what have you, or disaster porn in many cases. But what you need to do is to tell it as it is. If something is obviously nuts and crazy, it's nuts and crazy. Now, when that bridge went down, what did I do? I went up and I looked at what real shipping people were saying, what engineers were saying. I had some reports of so many engineers are saying the bridge couldn't come down. I couldn't find a single report on that. And when I asked people to provide such information, they couldn't do it. Again, if people can't do research, they shouldn't be involved in the news business, and they shouldn't be reporting to others. So that being said, there are a lot of other things going on in the world. I'll probably try to put out a special report or two. I've been meaning to do that. I have been under the weather for a few days, and I've had to handle things as best I can. But that being said, I will cut this extended report a little bit short and tell you to, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Consider a paid subscription. If you want to give me feedback, I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com, feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I am also available on X/Twitter, which is MICCAMPEN. Again, my handle there is MICCAMPEN. Until later this week or next week, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and good day.